right, pre-cal. We are reviewing for the quadratics and complex numbers test that's going to be on Thursday and Friday of this week, which will be the 17th and 18th. The first, you should have got the review in class, or there's review on Canvas as well. The first 7 or 8 questions can all be done in the calculator. Anything you see with an eye on it can be done with a calculator. Here are the answers are 1 through 7. I omitted number 3 because I want to talk to you about that. So just check your answers here. You can pause it. Make sure you're typing stuff in the calculator correctly. If you see parentheses, put parentheses. Know the difference between a minus and a negative. The calculator, that's a minus. You got to type it in as a negative. That's not minus parentheses minus 9. It's minus parentheses negative 9. So make sure you're typing that in correctly. When you get to quotients, remember you cannot type them in as a fraction. You're going to get them in as an error. So you have to say stuff divided by stuff. So you would type this in as 4 minus 11i divided by stuff 2 minus 19i. Parentheses are really important. Now you're going to get a crazy decimal with that, and if you go math in or enter, change it to a fraction, you should be good. Same thing with 7, stuff divided by stuff. So let's go back and talk about number 3. Number 3, before you can start multiplying, you have to simplify the radical, okay? Because you have the square root of a negative, you have to simplify the radical. Treat that like parentheses. So the square root of a negative becomes imaginary. So we get 2i radical 10. 10 cannot be broken down. Times square root of a negative becomes imaginary. 3i radical 5. 5 cannot be broken down. Now you're ready to multiply. 2i times 3i is 6i squared. And then square root of 10 times square root of 5 is square root of 50. Now 6i squared, I squared is negative 1. So 6 times negative 1 is negative 6. And then we want to break down the square root of 50. The biggest perfect square that goes into that is 25. 25 times 2. 25 is a perfect square, 2 is not. So when you bring 25 out, you get, the square root of 25 out, you get 5. Negative 6 times 5. Whoops. Negative 6 times 5 is going to be negative 30 radical 2. Now, this is the most missed question every year on my test. Students try to do 2 times 3 and get 6. They do square root of negative 10 times square root of negative 5. They get square root of positive 50, and they end up getting a positive 30 radical 2. That is going to be a choice on the test, so don't do it. Another thing you could do is you could, let me see if I can get this up here. You could always type in the original problem in your calculator. Make sure your mode is in A plus BI mode. Mine is. Okay. Now I can type in the original problem, which, let me see what the original problem was again. 2 square root of negative 10 and then arrow out times 3 square root of negative 5. So if you type the original problem in the calculator like you see it, you get negative 42 blah 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 stuff. Notice there's no I on that, and notice that it is a negative number. So in your multiple choice, you're looking for a real number, nothing with I's in it, and you're looking for a negative answer. And if we type in our answer that we got, negative 30 radical 2, you will see it is the same decimal. So you can check your work like that. Okay, as we scroll down here, question number 8 is another quotient, so you want to do stuff divided by stuff. When in doubt, parentheses out. You get a decimal, go math, enter, change it back to a fraction, you get negative 7/3 I. Okay, number 9 says change the quadratic equation from vertex to standard form. So right now it's in vertex form. By the way, if you wanted to find that vertex, that would be -2, -8. Remember, what's inside with x is the x value of the vertex. You do the opposite when you bring it out of the parentheses. And then -8 is, that's your y value, -8. You don't change it because it's not in parentheses. But this problem is asking us to change it from vertex to standard form. So what we have is we have y equals -6 times the product of x plus 2 squared. That's an x plus 2 times an x plus 2. All right. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to FOIL here or distribute twice, however you want to think about it. But you don't distribute this -6 until you multiply that out. So x times x is going to give you x squared. Your outers are going to give you 2x. Your inners are going to be 2x. That makes a total of 4x. And your last times your last is 2 times 2, which is 4. So next you're going to want to distribute your -6. So we get y equals -6x squared. -6 times 4x is -24x. -6 times 4 is -24. Don't forget your -8. And your like terms are down here. So the standard form is y equals -6x squared minus 24x minus 32. And that's your answer for number 9. Question number 10 wants you to give the coordinates of the complex number graph below. The real number line is labeled and the imaginary number line is labeled, or axis, I should say axis. And remember, complex numbers are a plus bi. So to get to point A, we're going to go right to in the real, on the real axis, and then we're going to go down to -5 on the imaginary axis. So it's 2 minus 5i, and that's all for that. Okay, question 11 wants you to change the quadratic function from vertex to standard form. Again, if you wanted to find the vertex, there will be a problem like that on the test. Who's inside with x is -3, so when you bring it out, +3 is your x value of the vertex, 7 is your y. And to multiply this out, we're going to have 4 times the product of x minus 3 squared. So that's x minus 3 times an x minus 3. Don't forget the plus 7. So inside the brackets, you're going to FOIL or distribute twice. So that's going to give you x squared. The outers are -3x. The inners are -3x. That makes -6x. And last times last is +9. Now you're going to distribute the 4. So when you do that, you have 4x squared minus 24x plus 36 plus 7. Like terms are 36 plus 7, so your final answer is y equals 4x squared minus 24x plus 43. Okay, question number 12 says, by the way, this is a typo. It was a multiple choice question. I changed it to open-ended, so just take that out, and I want you to describe the transformations of the graph to the parent graph. So the parent function is absolute value of x, and we have 3 new things. We have a negative, which is a reflection. So if the negative is the negative is definitely not inside with x, so it's outside with y, so we don't want to reflect on y, we want to reflect on the x-axis. All right, the next thing I have is times 3. That's a dilation. It's inside with x, so it's going to be a horizontal change. So we're going to horizontally, now you're either going to stretch or compress. You think multiply by 3 would stretch it, but it's with x, so it's going to compress not by 3, but by 1/3. And then -5 is outside with y. That's a translation. Y is either up or down, so -5 is down 5. So if you struggle with transformations, you need to go back and look over the transformation test, transformation notes, or transformation quiz. Question 13 says, give the vertex of the following quadratic function. It is in vertex form, so inside with x is -5, but when you bring it out, that's going to be +5. and the y value is positive 3, you don't change the sign, so the answer is A. Number 14 wants you to find the vertex, but it's in standard form. So this is where you got to remember the x value of the vertex is negative b over 2 times a. So the negative of b over 2 times a, b is 40, a is negative 5. So you can type all that in your calculator, or that's negative 40 over negative 10, which is a positive 4. So I'm looking down here at my choices. X is supposed to be 4. The only one that works is this one. Might want to plug it back in to find y just to make sure I did it right. So when you plug this in to solve for y, remember everywhere there's an x, you need to put parentheses. And then instead of x, we're plugging in x value of the vertex, we're plugging in 4. And when you type all that in the calculator, you get y equals 69. So the answer is D. All right, number 15 wants you to change the quadratic equation from standard to vertex form. First of all, I want you to remember that your leader is always your leader. So since A is 4, A should be 4. And these two do not have an A of 4. So what you're going to notice is the other two equations are exactly the same except for the x value of the vertex. So how do you find the x value of the vertex? Negative b over 2a. b is negative 24. A is 4. So that's 24 over 8, which is a positive 3. Now remember, if x is positive 3, if the x value of the vertex is 3, and then we find the y value, which if you plug 3 back up in here and solve for y, y is equal to negative 34, which we should already know that because minus 34, that's the y value on all these. But if the x value of the vertex is 3, we don't put positive 3 in the parentheses. We put minus 3. You do the opposite. Number 16 says solve the given equation. Let me shimmy up here. All right. So if I'm solving for x, I have 8x squared plus 512 equals 0. So I only have one x in the problem, so I can get x by itself. So I'm going to subtract 512, subtract 512. And then I want to get rid of times 8. Before I do the exponent, I got to get rid of times 8 by divide by 8. And let me use a calculator here. Negative 512 divided by 8. I get negative 64. And when you take the square root of the left and the square root of the right, square root means you got plus or minus. The square root of a negative becomes imaginary, and you're left with square root of 64, which we should know is a perfect square, 8. So plus or minus 8i, which was the answer right there. Number 17 wants to know which of the following expressions is a root of the quadratic equation. So we're going to find both solutions. However, we really just need one of the solutions. But I'm going to use the quadratic formula because what I noticed right here is that all the answers have a radical in them. So you can't factor this. All right, so let's go to x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So you're going to plug in your ABCs. Your b is 3. Your a is negative 2, and your c is negative 4. So I get negative 3 out front. In the denominator, I got negative 4. I got to remember I can't leave a negative 4 in the denominator. Plus or minus the square root of, I'm going to type in all the stuff underneath the square root. And I get negative 23. Now, square root of a negative becomes imaginary. This one does not have an I in it. The other three do. This one doesn't have a fraction 4 in it. The other two do. Oh, actually they don't. So the answer is C. But look, why is this an answer? Because a negative 3 divided by negative, because we're going to divide everything by negative, That becomes positive 3 over 4 plus or minus I radical 23. It just wants one of the answers. It picked the minus answer. So that's the correct answer.